Principal under fire for paddling a 6-year-old in front of her mom. Someday that kid will tell the story about the $1 million spanking she once received. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. All right, every week we showcase just a few of the endless stories impacting kids in schools across this country, but we do more than just talk about the issues. FreedomProject Academy is now enrolling students for the fall. FPA provides a classical education built on Judeo-Christian values for kids in kindergarten all the way through high school. All you have to do is request a free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com, and take a look at what alternative education in your own home can look like. Okay, today we start in Florida, where a horrible video has surfaced of an elementary school principal beating a 6-year-old with a paddle. This is a very tricky story. On the one hand, it looks as if this principal has gone way off the rails. On the other hand, the more you look at it, the more you realize mom is actually abetting this. After it was over, after this spanking was over, the mom changed her mind, apparently, and filed a police complaint. We'll let the clip itself explain what happened.
Finally, you understand what's going on. Wait, hold on. Put your butt out. Out.
That's a school principal.
No, put your hands down. No.
Hitting a 6-year-old with a wooden paddle in front of her mother.
Behaving and taking care of the stuff. You don't keep messing up things.
Mom told deputies the school called Tuesday, April 13th, saying her daughter damaged the computer. The fee? $50. In the report, Mom says the school also mentioned paddling, with her and a deputy present. In the report, the mother says she didn't understand the process correctly. Later that day, she went to the school to pay the fee, and they took her into the principal's office. It's now up to the state attorney to decide whether to pursue charges against the principal and the clerk in the video. Mom took her daughter to the doctor that same day, documented the red marks and bruises. She now worries about the long-term psychological damage.
This is a very complicated story. I mean, on the one hand, in certain districts in Florida, it is actually legal to induce corporal punishment like this in school. This is not one of those schools.
Correct, not in Hendricks County.
So while in certain districts of Florida this would be acceptable, it's not in Hendricks County, number one. Number two, when you watch that video, you can certainly see how big that principal is, and she wails on that little girl.
So you can see that it was the mom actually in the room filming it, and you saw in the news report that maybe it was, miscommunication. She didn't know what the actual process was. Basically, what it came down to at the beginning was the little girl damaged the computer. It would be $50, or she could get paddled, which she did. Now, originally when the story came out, it was, oh no, is there going to be fines or some prosecution?
The principal's going to be in big trouble.
But now the attorney said that there will be no criminal charges of her conduct, and after the fact, the mom of the principal, the mother actually said thank you to the principal, because I guess supposedly what was happening, the rest of the story, is that little girl was also at home not listening to her mother, and her mom didn't know how to get her to listen, and so then it became she wanted the principal to actually put forth the punishment with the paddle. Apparently that girl,
so according to the story, the girl was hard to handle, the little girl. Mom didn't know what to do. Mom didn't feel like she could be the one.
She couldn't discipline her.
And it begs the question, did this principal in a non-corporal punishment district, did she have that paddle with her? Is that something she carries with her all the time?
That is actually a very good question.
Right, number one. Where'd that paddle come from, number one? Number two, this is a distasteful story. I don't care who you are. You've got to be smarter than that. When some mom comes to you and says, I want you to physically punish my daughter because I won't, you should run away from that as fast as possible. And then they also thought this would be a good thing to film so that we could make sure that everybody knows what happened. They're trying to be transparent about this, right?
This is true.
This is another strike against the mom who, after it was over, had buyer's remorse.
Yeah, so the mom actually told the police that she was sacrificing her daughter. Right. That was the term, sacrifice her daughter, so that she could videotape the episode for the benefit of the community. And that makes me wonder, what is she talking about and what's going on in that community that you need?
It is. I don't understand why there are no charges being filed against the principal, though, because that is not a corporal punishment school. She should at
the whole
least
county isn't. Hendry County is
She
not.
should pay a price for that. She wailed on a kid in a district where it's not allowed. How is that? And just because the mother asked her to? Are you kidding me? If mother had said, hey, I want you to sexually molest my child, and it's okay because I'm asking you to do it, this is outrageous.
Well, and it's kind of like, I ask you to physically hit my child. Okay, I ask you to not teach sexuality to my 6-year-old. No.
Yeah.
That's where they draw the line.
Right. So I'll let you beat my child, but I'm not going to do anything serious when you sexualize kids as young as 6 and 7. This whole thing is bizarre. Again, I go back to this. If you're the principal, even if this was a spanking district, even then she would have made a big mistake doing this. You just don't do that. Even if corporal punishment was allowed in this district, to do it on the behest of the mother is a very bizarre thing. But in a district where this was not allowed, I don't understand why they're waiving any responsibility against the principal, number one. Number two, where did this paddle come from? Who brought it in there? If I had to bet, I would bet it was a paddle that the teacher already had. I find it hard to believe that mom dragged her own paddle into this, but you never know. And then, of course, to the surprise of nobody, after the punishment, then the so-called mom reconsiders, probably smelling a great big fat paycheck in the air, right? Because now you have video evidence of a principal in a school district where corporal punishment is not allowed, wailing on a child.
Now, when we talk about, sexualizing our kids and all of the gender nonsense, we have at least one teacher who is speaking up about it. His name is Jonathan Kepsel. He's a Louisiana high school teacher, and he's been teaching for 3 years. And in that time, he's seen how dumb we've gotten with all the gender stuff. And so he went viral for last month at the school board meeting, actually showing exactly what his students in Louisiana are being taught about gender theory curriculum. Just take a look.
Like, meet Moby and Orbot. They are my best friends. Actually, yeah, they can be used as a singular pronoun too. Like if you said, I'm going to see my friend, I could ask, where do they live? Since I don't know your friend's gender identity. And some individuals prefer they as a pronoun. Like meet Orbot. They are my best friend.
We got kids that can't read and write, and then we're going to teach them incorrect grammar. I mean, it's ridiculous, okay? Who gave permission to talk about this with kids? There's two genders. If you're born with a penis and you have testicles, that's just anatomy. You're a male. If you have a vagina and ovaries, you're a female. A man cannot menstruate. A man cannot lactate and breastfeed a child. You cannot give birth if you're a man. If you want to be an adult and do whatever you want with your life, I'm okay with that. Don't push this ideology on children. I'm not going to work in a district that's okay with that. You need to make a clear statement on how many genders are there, because parents they're already pulling their kids out of public school. They're doing homeschool options. They're going online. It's going to increase as this liberal ideology comes into our schools. This isn't a political indoctrination camp, okay? It's public education. We want to teach education, not left-wing ideas that aren't backed up by facts or science.
Total congratulations to Jonathan Keppel. And it sounds so obvious, right? I mean, I said this at the beginning of the week yesterday. We need teachers that are willing to stand up. This guy stands up. Where is his support? Why is not every teacher in that school standing right behind him? Why is this a single male teacher making this without all of his teachers just behind the backup?
And so what's happening is, he said, because he went and talked to the Daily Caller, and he was interviewed by them, and he wanted to know, like, how was it, the response that you've gotten? And he said, there's been a lot of teachers in school who've done the hush hush, thank you, because I agree with you, but of course they're remaining silent. And he said the school board hasn't talked to him yet. His administration hasn't said anything. They're probably just gonna let it lie, it sounds like. But it's the outside groups, the leftists, who have come to attack him. They've tried contacting the school board to get him kicked off. They're, I'm sure, going to, make it so they're going to find people who are going to run for the school board, so that then when they get on the school board, then they'll oust him. They're going to go crazy doing
I'm not
that.
convinced the school's going to let this slide. They've
So
not
far.
talked to him yet,
Yet.
but every year you have to be reappointed, right?
This is
You
true.
watch what happens now.
Well-
We'll hear nothing about this until midsummer when they're doling out who's coming back next year. Maybe I can't believe the school will let this be.
And he said basically, at least down in Louisiana, it didn't get that bad until a certain event happened. Take a look.
Everything got extremely political at school during the Trump-Biden election, right? When the 2020 election. I mean, it got ridiculous. A lot of teachers were talking about their own personal views on politics, which should not happen in the classroom. And this was not just at my school. This was at a lot of different schools. I'm connected with some other teachers locally and nationally. I got friends in all over the country. I also know a lot of kids because I've volunteered a lot with youth groups through like my church and stuff. And so kids would tell me like, I got this teacher, I got this administrator, and they are pushing these strange assignments that we're having to do about conservatives and liberals, but mostly it's about conservatives and how conservatives are bad people and how Donald Trump is an extremist. And so all of that started happening leading up to the 2020 election, and it's been just getting really, really extreme since.
Yeah, this is a guy I would love to have teach my kids. And we should reach out to him at Freedom Project and say, hey, you want to teach for a real
There we
school?
go. Come by us.
We would love to have this guy. We should at some point. Should reach out to him and say, hey, if you find yourself in a position where you can no longer teach there, we would be honored to have you join our faculty at Freedom Project. But the thing that is so frustrating is I said this at the beginning of the week. It's not enough because teachers get mad at me. We get a note here and there that I like the Dr. Duke show, but he really seems to dislike teachers. No, why are you not? If you're one of those good teachers, right? The Mr. Keppel said, look, I have colleagues. They came up to me in hallways. They made sure no one was listening, and they told me how proud they were of me. Why are you not doing it publicly? He's risking his career publicly to stand up for what's right. The best you can do is to give him a shout out in the middle of a hallway or on a staircase when no one's listening to you. Where is his backup? If it's true that half that school thinks the way he does, if they don't stand up next to him, then you've lost, right? You've got to be willing to risk something for these kids.
Yeah, he's basically putting his whole neck out there. And he did say in that interview as well that he saw exactly what's happening in his area, and he decided, I can't take this anymore. I need to not be quiet about it. I need to take a very firm stance. And then as we've been talking on this show for how many months now, if not years, critical race theory. And what happens is he's an actual teacher, boots on the ground. We're here talking about it, but it's from the horse's mouth. So take a look.
The biggest issue with critical race theory is that it demonizes white people and it victimizes anybody who's black or of another color and says that white people are the source of all of your problems. When you start telling somebody they are a victim and they don't have a chance and that everything is against them, what motivation does that person have to succeed in life? Everybody that I have ever met in my entire life faces serious obstacles. Okay, we all are going to face something very difficult. We all don't get a fair treatment.
Well, I, like Jonathan Keppel, am boots on the ground, right? I teach in universities. I was teaching in universities 30 years before it ever came into his public high school. So he's exactly right. The big problem with critical race theory is it's racist. It is predicated on skin color. It does not distinguish between anybody other than the color of their skin. If you're white, you're guilty. You're guilty of all the sins of white people down through history. If you're black, no matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter how much you hate people, you cannot be considered a racist. Give me a break. It is replacing so-called racist behavior. Much of it has already been eradicated with your own radical new form of racism that takes us back to pre-Jim Crow and pretending that this is social justice. So Jonathan Keppel, in conclusion, good on you, my brother. We will be keeping an eye on you, and when and they do decide not to rehire you, we'll at least offer you a job at Freedom Project.
It's been a long year, and it's getting to be summertime. It's May. It's May. It's been a long year. A long year with all the COVID from last year. 2020 is still going on. Anyway, so you're saying, you know what, family, we're going to go on a trip. we're going to go to Disneyland in California. And you decide you're going to go on the Snow White roller coaster. And then, at the very end of the ride, what happens? But the prince kisses Snow White without her consent, and so your trip is ruined. Well, that's at least the scenario happening with all the cancel culture-ists, all the people who think they must cancel everything. And so it's kind of, it's funny, but it's also true as to what's happening at Disneyland. So it's from campus reform. They decided, as they do, they're off campus. They actually went to Disneyland itself and asked some college kids what they thought about this.
Yeah, before we do that real quick, though, let me just set the scene a little bit. I assume most everybody knows the story of Snow White. I guess they do. But in case they don't, all right, it's a witch puts a spell on Snow White that she sleeps. And unless she is kissed by a prince
who's charming,
she will never, ever wake up. She will effectively be
never,
dead.
Never, ever.
Right? So here she is, and she's in a kind of state of suspended animation. She is put in a quasi-coma by a witch. Now, how is she supposed to consent? How in the world is she supposed to consent when she's in a death-like state? So according to the radical left, until the prince is able to secure consent from a woman in a coma, he's going to have to let her stay in the coma. We would rather, this is so left-wing, we would rather have her dead than kissed by a man without getting permission. And why is nobody concerned about 7 horny dwarves? That's the thing that would, as a dad, that would scare the crap out of me. Here's my snowy white daughter in a state of suspended animations, and you've got horny and wheezy and lusty. What are they all?
Sleepy. I mean, you would sleepy.
You've got Lechy and Gropey and Joe Biden-y. What are the name of all those?
But they're all one and the same.
Creepy little dwarves. What do you think they're doing when she's laid out on that slab every Friday night?
Anyway.
Bring a couple of beers. This is crazy talk, I'm telling you.
The Snow White ride recently just reopened in Disneyland, California, and it's already facing some backlash. A publication called the San Francisco Gate recently published an article criticizing the end of the ride for portraying the prince kissing Snow White, and they claim that the prince never had consent to do so.
I don't think that you can use our modern day standards to justify a story from then, and they do have an interaction before. He's not just a guy at a party that, she never met before.
When I was a kid, I never thought, hey, that's kind of weird. So I don't know why they would think kids would think that now.
To me, it's just like, that's how the movie is. So I feel like if you were like a kid wouldn't think anything of it.
Not really. I feel like it's like kind of a magical story. So the whole point of it is like the magic behind the kiss to wake her up, and he knows he's like the one true love. So it doesn't really, offend me or anything.
What do you think would have happened if the prince would have waited around until he got consent from Snow White to kiss her?
She did!
I think there's bigger issues that you can be fighting than Snow White. Maybe talk to your representatives and try to make real change instead of attacking a fairy tale, but whatever you got to do.
All right, I've been challenged to name the dwarves here. These horny. You got Pokey, right? Mm-hmm. Gropey. You got Lusty. And Sleazy. Mm-hmm. And Joe Biden, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then you've got, who else? Who am I missing here? Help me out here.
Billy Clinton.
Oh, Clinton?
Epstein.
Yep. So anyway,
I think it's all of them.
Where are these creepy dwarves? For all that time.
That's your main
if you really want to complain about something, if you really want to go after somebody, but see, we've already made a mistake. They're not dwarves. They're mini people. What do we call them?
They could be called.
What's the politically correct word?
We don't know.
Little people.
Well,
that's
what there's a show called Little People Big World, but who knows what you're allowed to say and what you're not. Anywho, back to this. What's fascinating is usually we show these campus reform videos, and all of the college kids are idiots. But here's the deal. They're not on the college campus, so maybe it's only when you set foot on these campuses that you just become so dumb. But when you go to the magic fantasy world that is Disneyland, you become brilliant.
Suddenly they're in the gropiest place on earth, right?
And then, yes. Also,
wasn't Walt Disney himself accused of some pretty creepy?
He's got he needs to be canceled.
There you
he's
go.
A white guy who made money. He made money. Anyway, so I would like to put forth this as my nominee for the most common sense.
It was
college video that we've ever shown on the Dr. Duke show.
The students handled that with extreme correctness. So, but I would also say this: why go if you really want to be offended? Why would you go to Disneyland when you see what the Disney Channel's become?
Yeah.
The Disney Channel has become slutty Miley Cyrus ever since Hannah Montana became a slut. The Disney Channel is nothing more than one huge promotion of sex and homosexuality. It's the least friendly place in the world for kids. It's time now for some real education. François-Marie Arouet, 1694, he was born. 1778, his life spanned the Enlightenment as we know it. Known by his nom de plume, he is Voltaire, right? The great French anti-authoritarian, the great French wag, the great French sermonizer to the authority and the power that existed from his day. I like to think of him as Mark Twain on high voltage. Get the pun there? So let's take a look at what some quotes from Voltaire for today and get a sense of the mind of the man. If we had some Voltaires running around, wish we had some Voltaires running around the world today. He said, quote, "The discovery of what is true and the practice of that which is good are the two most important aims of philosophy. To discover what is true and to practice that which is good." Can you imagine if we applied that definition of philosophy to all of these left-wing controversies like made-up gender science? Number two, he said, "It's not sufficient to see and know the beauty of a work. We must feel and be affected about it." That's beautiful, right? When you're reading a play or you're reading a novel or you're going to see the museum to see art, understand what he said. It's not enough to see and understand that a work of art is beautiful. It must make us feel and it must change us. That's the purpose of art. I like this next one, very pithy. "Men argue, nature acts." Let that be a lesson to you, all of you social planners who think that you're going to get a handle on quote-unquote climate change. Men argue back and forth. Nature is nature, and there's very little you're going to do to change her. Number three, and the next one, quote, "Reading nurtures the soul, and an enlightened friend brings it solace." Reading is what feeds the soul, and an enlightened friend is what comforts it. And then finally, those who can make you believe absurdities, they're called the left in America, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. How prescient is that for today, right? Those who can make you believe absurd things will very soon have you doing atrocious things. Beware the left.
And now you know the rest of the story. That's all the stories we have for today. And if you have a question for us, please feel free to drop it in the mailbag by emailing askduke@fpeusa.org. And if you enjoy our content, please support our show and join the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And of course, as a special thank you, we are going to ship you our red signature tumbler.
And that wraps up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie. Until next time, be a little bit more like Voltaire, my friends.